Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, hosted by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. Here we are, Brant, back again on YouTube Live. Once again, putting these ugly mugs out into the public eye. It's getting to be a recurring trend here. I'm not sure how good that is for everybody, but we got through. We wrapped up our divisional breakdowns of off-season needs. And now it's back into doing some exciting stuff that we've been looking forward to doing here for a while. So Today, we're going to get into some fantasy, some free agent relevant news to fantasy and the impacts it's going to have, moves that we love, moves we hate, and moves we're not sold on yet. So I'm excited for this episode. Definitely feels a little more our speed versus what we were doing the last couple of weeks, Brant.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, these names and everything may end up changing a little bit down the road, pending draft and other things going on. But as of right now, we're going to discuss some names that we love or like, and then mostly some of the names that are going to fall off, probably fall off the fantasy relevant chart or slide way down there. And then we'll get into later in the weeks to come. We'll talk about some more rookies coming up. We'll talk about some draft stock and talks about kind of a little more what teams need from the draft fantasy wise. Not as in depth as I think we did go just the past few weeks with those, but that's kind of what to look forward to leading up to the draft. And then after the draft, man, that's when we get to dive head first into the mock drafts and really get everyone ready for the dynasty year.
Yeah, Brent, I think it's important, too, to let people know the reason I don't like doing rookie mock drafts this early. I mean, I guess that there's some kind of merit to it. But for me, landing spot really does matter with a lot of these rookies. And so I think people who spend a lot of time doing mock drafts right now are going to be really disappointed when a certain player they love's ADP is no longer in the late second round because he falls to an amazing landing spot. So I don't typically do too many mock drafts this early. It's not something that I want to invest a lot of time in just because things change so much in between now and then. And really, it's just you almost do a disservice to yourself if you fall in love with landing or a player's ADP now versus prior to the draft, unless you're in one of those teams that you draft your rookies, prior to the actual NFL draft, or if you're in a Devy league, then obviously things are a little bit different there.
Yeah, really. And in my mind, in this draft, there's really only one player that I don't think landing spot would change his ADP any, and that's Robinson, the running back out of Texas. I think he's pretty much in a normal 1 QB league. I guess I really can't call that normal anymore. In a 1 QB league, I think he's the 101 easily. And then in a super flex, he's right up there in the top probably 4 or 5 picks. And I think he's the first non-quarterback to come off the board in a super flex. And I think that's really the only player that you could vouch is kind of a set it and forget it type of guy right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Bijan Robinson, obviously Superflex changes a little bit, but landing spot wise, it doesn't matter. He should be the 101. Again, unless you're in a Superflex league and you just have, if you finish the year last year with Tom Brady and somebody else and quarterback has to be taken, then obviously then it is what it is. But otherwise, it's Bijan Robinson. So. Brant, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into these free agents a little bit here. Let's look at some free agent guys that let's start with the guys we hate. Or not necessarily the guys we hate, but the landing spots that we hate. Let's go there first and see where we can get to from there.
Okay, I'll lead this off, and I'm going to lead this off with a whole bunch of a group of guys, and that's the Miami running backs. They re-signed all three: Gaskin, Wilson, and Mostert. So once again, we're looking at a season going forward, 3-headed monster. Don't need to really talk about their stats too much. A lot of people know what happened. They all finished decent. None of them really broke out. I know, Mostert had a few great games and Wilson had a few great games. But now we're going back in and it's once again, just a 3-headed monster going in. So, I mean, they did nothing for themselves. And honestly, I think that may have hurt their offense a little bit too. I know Mostert finishes the RB25 in most fantasy leagues, PPR wise. And I think Jeff Wilson, I'm pulling it up, he finished in number 30. So they both were serviceable. I know Gaskin wasn't the greatest last year, but he did see some time. Both have injury history. I really think that this may have been a terrible idea of putting all three of them back on the field prior to the draft, because I really think that Miami needs to get themselves a workhorse, or at least a two running back system, and get away from these older guys.
Yeah, I think ran a strong running game in Miami would actually do wonders for Tua as well. Maybe take a little pressure off of him as the play action game would be a little bit better and things of that nature. But that Miami has been a landing spot that going into the last two off seasons, I think a lot of people were really excited about, and then Miami just really muddies the water for all of us in fantasy by throwing all these different names in there. And it's kind of much in the way of San Francisco prior to CMC. It was, the hot hand. Whoever's the hot hand is going to get the ball this game. And that's really tough when you're setting a lineup for fantasy, because if I put Raheem Mostert in and he fumbles on the third carry of the game and Jeff Wilson, rips one for 20 yards, who's going to have the better game the rest of the day? Well, Jeff Wilson's going to get more work than Raheem Mostert moving forward. So, it just makes it really hard for fantasy to, trust one of those guys and put one of them out into your starting lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely hate it even a little bit more because I am an owner of two of those three guys in our dynasty league. And I was really hoping that, they would move on or become the workhorse and try to make some moves with them. But I mean, I just don't think you really can. These guys are going to have to be a wait and see. You don't wish injury on anybody, but if one does get injured, then you do have a top probably 15 running back. But if they're both healthy, I think you might be looking at maybe two top 35 running backs. And when I say two top 35s, I'm talking from number 30 to number 35, unless an injury happens.
I want to touch real quick on the fact that you said you've got both these guys in the dynasty league and you're not a fan. Listen, you're the defending champion. Nobody feels sorry for you. Suck it up, Buttercup, and go cry into your river.
Don't worry, that trophy will be shown a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting a little bit.
Maybe you could polish it with your tears of Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert over there.
Yeah.
All right. So the first guy that I'm just, I'm not a fan of the landing spot. I genuinely actually hate the landing spot. Is Allen Lazard to the New York Jets. He goes and signs a 4-year, $44 million deal. I know it's all in pursuit of Aaron Rodgers, but when you add a guy who played 15 games last year, had 60 receptions, 788 yards, and 6 touchdowns, all it is going to do is drag down the fantasy value a little bit of guys like Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and Tyler Conklin. Listen, all those guys last year had pretty decent value for where they were drafted. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's kind of stock is astronomical. Like, he's being listed on the NASDAQ. He's so high at this point in the stock market world. But the thing is, one, Aaron Rodgers is not a Jet yet. And two, if even with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, yeah, he's got the past chemistry with Allen Lazard, but what does this do for, Garrett Wilson's explosion last year? What does it do for a resurgence for guys like myself that have held and Brant, you too, that have held on to Elijah Moore, hoping that there's a bounce back? Or again, Corey Davis, who in his last year with the Tennessee Titans was electric. I mean, all of these guys have had great moments in their career. And then again, Tyler Conklin really came onto the scene as a relevant tight end for fantasy. What does Allen Lazard do to all this? For me, it just muddies the waters, very similarly to what we just discussed with the Miami backfield. If every one of these guys are getting a decent amount of targets, if you're giving 4 targets to a guy like Allen Lazard, 4 targets to a guy like Elijah Moore, 4 targets for a guy like Corey Davis, and 4 targets for a guy like Tyler Conklin, that doesn't leave a whole lot for a guy like Garrett Wilson that's being valued as a top 10 dynasty startup wide receiver right now. As a Garrett Wilson owner in a lot of leagues, Brant, I'm terrified right now. I was excited about the Aaron Rodgers news until Allen Lazard came to town, until he's pushing for Randall Cobb and OBJ. Whatever's true and what isn't true, it's definitely got me nervous as an owner of Garrett Wilson, as well as Elijah Moore, just because, again, the more names, the more mouths you have to feed, the less there is to go around. I don't know if I'm way off here, Brant. Maybe you love the move. I'm just not a fan of it.
Absolutely not in love with that move. I thought it was really weird to see, to see that Rodgers wanted Lazard back and Cobb and all those times of talking about you never give me any weapons in Green Bay, and then you want the same 3 weapons or 2 of the 3 weapons that you had I believe one of his tight ends were on that list too. What was that, Lewis?
Mercedes Lewis,
Yeah. So I just, excuse me, I just don't understand it. You were walking into, if you were traded to the Jets as Aaron Rodgers, you were walking into probably one of the best receiving cores that you've had in cores. You're not walking into the best receiver you've had. You're walking into the best receiving core that you've probably had in probably the last 5 years.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Obviously, you've had Devontae Adams. You've had one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver. But what have you had outside of Adams in the last 5 years? I understand Lazard stood on or Rodgers stood on a table and pounded the table to keep Lazard in Green Bay over the time he was there. But what has he really done? I understand their connection was great last year. Well, he was the only one out there for half the time when Christian Watson was banged up, and then Romeo Doubs went out. I'm not sold. I think he's going to be playing fourth or fifth fiddle there. I know he's got the best chemistry. The only thing that I could see is maybe he wanted Lazard there to help mentor the young guys and get them ready to be catching passes from Aaron Rodgers. But still, that's quite a big contract for a mentor. I'll tell you what, I'd be more than happy to come mentor some people. I know I ain't the smartest, but you want to pay me $44 million over 4 years, I'll do my darndest.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody in the New York Jets is looking for somebody to come teach people how to eat donut holes and drink coffee. So you may be out of luck there, Brant. There's probably not going to be any $44 million contracts thrown at you anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could help the linemen beef up probably.
You probably could do that. All right, who's next on your list of guys that you're not a fan of?
Next hate list, not a fan of. David Montgomery to the Detroit Lions. 3 years, $18 million. Like I said, he's going to be playing with DeAndre Swift. I know Swift has the injury history. They lost Jamal Williams. Montgomery's coming off one of his better seasons. I know he finished his RB24 in the 16 games he played last year. He had 235 total touches, and like I said, he finished his RB24 in most PPR formats. But you're going in there with the guy that's been so hyped. They used a first or second round draft pick on this guy. Swift is very, very shifty, very good back when he is healthy. I know, the health has always been an issue, but that seems to be something with Georgia backs if you go back all the way to Todd Gurley. So that's something that I don't know, but I'm not sold. As long as Swift and him are both healthy, that's to me, it's almost a 50-50 split, because you got Monty, who's a ground and pound guy who's going to shed tackles. And then you got DeAndre Swift, who's going to be an amazing third down back and really can play if Detroit is trailing. And that's going to almost completely obliterate any type of pass work for Monty. I'm not sold. I don't like that landing spot. I wanted to see Monty go somewhere where he was going to be the bell cow and really upgrade himself. I understand he's moving to Detroit behind a better line than what he had in Chicago, but I don't think he sees 200 plus touches this year. So it'll be really, really hard for that.
All right. So the first question I have, Brant, when it comes to the Detroit Lions in general, when they put a guy through a physical in Detroit, do you think that Dan Campbell makes them test their bite strength to see if they'd be able to get through a kneecap? Or is that something that he just takes their word for it on, you think?
I think it's just something they got to take the word for when it comes down to that.
Okay. Yeah. As far as David Montgomery, I do tend to agree with you. It just feels a lot like, Detroit just doesn't believe in DeAndre Swift at this point. I do think David Montgomery at this point in his career is probably a slight upgrade over Jamal Williams. I'm not sure the numbers will indicate that. It'll depend on how many touches he gets and what the volume looks like. But I imagine the role will be very similar, right? Like I think Jamal Williams, if I remember correctly, had something like 12 receptions last year, so it wasn't much. David Montgomery should have a few more than that, as well as I would expect him to have well over 100 carries, probably closer to 150. It would be my guess, because I imagine this will be very much a 1A 1B conversation with Swift and Montgomery. But really, what it's done is it's made both of them. Both of Montgomery and Swift a lot less attractive in my mind. I think Both of them will slide significantly in startup rankings. I know Brant last year, I ripped the Band-Aid off here. Don't want to necessarily, talk about this, but when we get them wrong, we get them wrong. When we get them right, we get them right. We were both a lot higher on DeAndre Swift last year than where he finished. And I mean, significantly higher. We both had him as a top 5 back in fantasy. And that just didn't happen because of injuries and because of Jamal Williams. And I think this year when I go to sit down and do my rankings, which obviously I have not done yet, Brant, I don't know if I'll be able to get DeAndre Swift into my top 20 running backs. I think that's going to be an uphill battle at this point. So I'm not a huge fan of the David Montgomery move because, like I said, I think all of it does in the long run is just continuously tear down the value of DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. That backfield is going to be extremely hard to navigate again, just like it was this year. So not looking forward to any of that.
Absolutely. All right. So the last guy that I really hate the landing spot for is one of your favorite wide receivers in the National Football League. Not necessarily because he's been great, just because you just have a soft spot for him, which is fine. But Jacoby Myers, who went to the Vegas Raiders from the New England Patriots on a 3-year, $33 million deal. This one I don't like a lot just because you simply go from probably the best weapon on an offense with Mac Jones to I'm not really sure where you fall in the rankings with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't want to touch too much on Jimmy G just yet because I am going to talk about him again a little bit later on. But when you're staring down the competition levels of guys like Devontae Adams, who you mentioned earlier is one of the best wide receivers in football at this point, Hunter Renfrow, who's an excellent slot wide out, and then the strong ground game that Josh McDaniels kind of leaned on so much last year with Josh Jacobs. He re-signed or signed his franchise tag. So what does Jacoby Myers look like long term in Vegas? I'm not sure. I do know, take it or love it, leave it, hate it, whatever. I think what he did last year in his 14 games played with New England, I think the numbers are going to be really similar. There may be a little bit of an uptick in yards, maybe a downtick in receptions, whatever. He had 67 receptions, 804 yards, 6 touchdowns. Now, obviously, if he does that again as the third best passing option in Vegas, you're probably happy with that, Brant. But I'm just not sold on this fit. I think it's good for Jimmy G. I don't think it's good for Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, I loved it at first when I saw him going there with Jimmy G, and then I sat down and got to thinking, going, shoot, Renfrow was still there. Waller was still there at the time. Adams was still there. I go, I don't like this anymore. When I sat down and got to thinking, Jacobs is still there. Amir Abdullah is still there. I don't know. Originally, I loved Jacoby Myers, and yes, I do have a soft spot for him since he came into the league. He's been a great, flex start for me in our dynasty league when I need him, and I don't know how much I trust that anymore. That offense is, we've seen Jimmy G be very, very productive with a run-first offense. Lean on your running back and open it up through play action. And I'm sorry, when you're opening it up through play action, that's Adams is your first look, and then I'm looking at Renfrow because he covers the middle of that field. So I absolutely don't know how I feel about Jacoby Myers at all. I don't hate it yet, but I'm getting there.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So let's go next, Brant, to the guys that we're not sold on.
Guys, I'm not sold on. I got 2 of them. One of them is maybe a little homer pick for me because, I love to talk about it, but we'll get to that one in a minute. That's Robert Woods going to the Houston Texans. I know he's going to go in. He's going to fill in for Brandon Cooks as Brandon Cooks just got traded over to the Dallas Cowboys. You got Nico Collins there still in Houston. So it's going to be, it's going to be something to see how that works. It's an older guy. He's going to mentor in. So we'll see how they how that goes with Robert Woods. I know he really didn't fit in Tennessee very well after moving over to the quarterback. Else, but it'll be something to see how that works in Houston. I don't know how it's going to.
Sounds like we may be having some technical difficulties with Brant here. He's kind of cutting in and out. So, oh, there he is. Are you back, Brant?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, there you go. You were cutting in and out real bad. Didn't catch much of what you were saying there.
Okay, I know Houston wants to go with a younger core of guys. So I don't know how that's going to work. Getting Robert Woods there, maybe a change of scenery would be really good for him and reemerge his career. I mean, look what he did for Cooper Kupp as Cooper Kupp was, coming into his own there in LA. And maybe, I mean, he really helped open it up. And maybe this is what Robert Woods needs to help open up the field and open up that offense a little bit. So maybe it will be a good one, but I'm not sure how that's going to be.
Yeah, I Robert Woods is a guy who's burnt me in fantasy, and Brand, I know you're near and dear to that situation, so you know my affections for Bobby Trees, as you would. But I do think I like this move for him. Again, much similarly in the ways that I'm going to talk about a couple other guys later on. When you get a rookie quarterback in, which it's there's no illusions here. It sounds like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud is going to be throwing passes in a Texans uniform next year, unless something crazy happens in between now and then. And those guys are going to love guys that have a shorter depth of target and can move with the ball in their hands afterwards. And we know that's Robert Woods back to his time in Los Angeles. That was on display. And we'll see how that looks in Houston. It can't hurt. I do think they add another wide receiver through the draft. But again, Robert Woods could be a great mentor to those guys. We know Brandon Cooks was checked out, and he probably wasn't mentoring a whole lot last year. So, it definitely could be that Robert Woods is going to come in and mentor some of those guys and maybe have one more good year for fantasy. I think I like him more in Houston than I will have ever in Tennessee. So, the only problem with him in Houston is he doesn't get to play the Texans twice a year. Now he's not in Tennessee, and we all know that's always a good thing for fantasy. So,
oh yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move in. I only have one guy that I'm not sold on yet, Brant, so I'm going to hit him, and then I'm going to let you move into yours. But Jimmy Garoppolo, okay, I obviously just talked about Jacoby Myers' fit in Vegas. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm not sure how I feel about this fit yet in Vegas. All right, so obviously we know Derek Carr left. Derek Carr's a gunslinger, not afraid to throw the ball, not afraid to air it out. Put the ball into some tight coverage and whatnot. But with a guy like Jimmy G, he's going to be much more patient with the ball, much more surgical, I guess, if you will, when you're moving up and down the field. So I just wonder how many deep balls guys like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow are going to have available to him. I think what you're going to see a lot, I think you could see targets go up and receptions go up for these guys. But I think yards and touchdowns could significantly drop just because I don't think you're going to see those home run plays in a Vegas offense where Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback. I think that obviously Jimmy's got some injury concerns himself at quarterback. As far as last year and the year before that, he's missed some time and whatever. But it is good to see him coming back as a no doubt starter at this point. Obviously. Maybe a quarterback falls to 7 where the Raiders have a pick, and maybe that's not how that works out. But through 15 games played in 2021, so we're going back 2 years when he was fairly healthy. He threw 441 passes, completed 301 of them for a 68% completion rating, 3,810 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Those numbers from a quarterback aren't going to be great for fantasy. They're not. Devontae Adams, I think, will be okay in this offense. Obviously, Devontae Adams is going to get his. Devontae Adams is going to do his thing. But when you get into guys like Hunter Renfrow and Jacoby Myers, I get extremely nervous for what that's going to look like with those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy G, and like you said, definitely not sold on. I absolutely love him in this situation. I love him for the team. I think he really, I don't think it's an upgrade for them. I don't think it's too much of a downgrade from Carr. We know Jimmy G's a great system quarterback, and I think he'll fall into that system, and I think he'll be just fine. But as for fantasy, like you said, I think Adams is the only one that you could really trust there. Outside of Adams and Jacobs, that's about it. I'm not trusting any of the other wide receivers there. And I'm not trusting Jimmy G to be throwing for 300 plus yards a game and 5 touchdowns. they're going to rely on that run game and try to keep the ball. Let's look at the other offenses they're going to play twice a year. The Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs, and now Denver Broncos, if they could figure out how to actually click that offense, get rid of their quarterback, not saying anything. But
Samaje Perine, baby, it's all over with. Just give him the ball.
Yeah, just give P. Ryan the ball. But they're going to try to keep the ball out of those hands of those high-powered offense, which means a lot of Josh Jacobs, a lot of offs. That's not going to cut it for fantasy-wise. So, yeah, Jimmy G maybe in a super flex, I'll trust him as, a bottom-tier quarterback 2. But, yeah, he's definitely not going to be my starter in a 1 QB league, and he's definitely not going to be a guy that I'm chasing to draft early or, excited to start every single week.
Okay, fair enough. All right, who's the last guy you're not sold on here, Brant?
Not sold on, but I absolutely love this man. And I'll tell you right now, guys, I was ready to sign him last offseason, trade for him last offseason. I had a pair of jeans ready to cut up. I was ready to take off the beard and just have the mustache going, and that's Gardner Minshew going to the Colts. I understand the Colts are probably going to add another quarterback through this draft. That's why I'm not sold on him. If it was just Minshew, the man's a certified winner. He's going to keep your team in the game. I guess I can't say he's a winner, but he's going to keep the team. He's going to keep the team in the game. We saw that at the end of the year with Philly. We saw it there in Jacksonville. He kept the team in the game. He does no problem slinging the ball over the field. If he happens to be the starter in Indianapolis, he's got a nice core of receivers there. He's got an amazing running back there. He's coming behind a decent line that they're upgrading. If he happens to win that job, Minshew could be a low-key out. Wait, let's not forget to add. He has no problem scrambling too. Minshew could be a guy you're talking as a top 12 QB in fantasy if they don't add anything there, and he is a 17-game starter. So Minshew's a guy to keep your eye on. And like I said, it could just be a homer pick for me, but I absolutely love Gardner Minshew, and I love what he brings to the table. He has nothing to lose when he's out there. What's he going to do? They're going to bench him for a rookie? Oh, cool. He's already done that once, twice, 3, 4 times in his career already. Don't think you're going to change his mind on a whole lot.
I will say this here on air, Brant. If I don't know what I'll do, but if Gardner Minshew is named the starter and has fantasy relevancy for more than a game or two this year in Indianapolis, I will allow myself to be punished somehow. I'm calling it not happening. I don't see it. I don't believe the hype. It's not there for me. I know you have your personal attachments to Gardner Minshew, but no thank you. The Colts will absolutely draft a quarterback here that I would expect to start most of the season, with Gardner being a serviceable backup, which is what he should be the rest of his career. He's not a certified winner in my book, although the mustache and the jeans do have some swag that doesn't carry over a whole lot on the football field, in my opinion. So, all right, here we go. Let's get into some guys we love. I'm going to kick us off because I think I have one more than you. I have 3 guys that I love. So I'm going to kick us off here. I've got Jamal Williams for the New Orleans Saints. He signed a 3-year, $12 million deal. The main reason, Brant, why I love this is Jamal Williams is going to be the starter for most of the season next year, depending on Alvin Kamara's suspension. This guy goes from being a late round draft steal, if you will, league winner, if you will, to going into a situation where, unless we know the suspension prior to a lot of these drafts being conducted, I know you and I have a startup draft being done in sometime in May. Jamal Williams will be late in that draft because the Kamara suspension news won't be out yet. So if your league's drafting prior to, and you're doing a startup prior to the Kamara suspension news coming down, if there is any, I do believe there will be, but I'm not a lawyer. However, if your league drafts before there's any finalization with that, Jamal Williams is going to go a lot later than he should. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy that I'm not saying he has long-term value in fantasy, but this year he should have an immediate impact in fantasy. So if you've already got him in a dynasty, whatever, if somebody's willing to trade for him, he should be available cheap. And I think he's going to have an amazing season. Again, last year, 266 rushing attempts for 1,066 yards rushing, 17 touchdowns, Brant. This guy put up numbers. I mean, it is what it is. We wanted it to be Swift. It wasn't Swift. It was Jamal Williams. Now, with him in New Orleans, everybody's going to want to see 17 touchdowns from Alvin Kamara, but it's not going to be Alvin Kamara. There's going to be some kind of a suspension. and Jamal Williams is going to be a focal point of this offense, barring they draft somebody. But I just don't see it happening. I think Jamal Williams is going to be the bell cow for at least however many games Kamara is suspended, and then have a role moving forward, much in the way that Mark Ingram did in his later time in his career there. I absolutely love Jamal Williams to the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I did too. And like you brought up, even after Kamara comes back, Jamal Williams is going to have a role. Let's look what they did with Taysom Hill on the goal line. Well, they don't. Is that experiment, honestly, lining him up in the backfield? I think that's over. Look what you just got. You just got Jamal Williams from 5 yards out of the end zone and forward. That's going to be Jamal Williams territory, even with Kamara back. He just has a nose for the end zone. We saw that last year. He's a great pounder right up the gut. He's obviously going to be better than Taysom Hill was at it. I know Taysom Hill is great, but I absolutely love Jamal Williams. I think he has flex value even after Kamara's suspension's up. But like you said, if Kamara gets suspended, which we both assume is going to happen, you're looking at Jamal Williams as a top 20 running back for that time frame, which is, I mean, you're going to get him in double-digit startup rounds. A is age. B, nobody knows what's going on with Kamara. It's going to be an easy steal to start the season. Great guy to get your dynasty league off the ground with. Absolutely love Jamal Williams going to the New Orleans Saints.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go with my like before I jump into my loves, because I do actually have 3. I forgot about this one right here in my notes, and that's I like this right now, and it's almost but this one is, I love Rashad Penny going to Philly. He doesn't have to be a full workhorse back like he was in Seattle. He gets to spill back a little bit of the work, so it should help him stay a little healthier. This guy was a top 15 running back when he was healthy going down the stretch 2 years ago. I understand he got hurt and missed most of year last year, but they didn't really sign anybody else to replace Miles Sanders there in Philly. I know they replaced him with Boston Scott, and I know you probably don't have a whole lot to say about Penny, but this is a guy that really, when he lines up, he fits the RPO option very well. And there in Philly, I think he's going to be a great addition. I think he's going to be a low-tier RB2 if they don't add another running back. They didn't have to pay him much either, so it's a one-year prove-it deal. It's a one-year prove-it deal for Boston Scott. That's about all they have in their backfield right now, and Kenneth Gainwell. All of them are kind of on prove-it. They've got 3 running backs that want to prove it, and I absolutely love this guy when he's healthy, and this could be the year that he gets to stay healthy. I know I've been, barking at that tree for a while. I'm going to continue to. And like I said, it may be a homer pick. He only signed a 1-year, $1.3 million. Excuse me. $1.3 million for this year. So we'll see how it goes with them. I assume they're probably going to add somebody, but I absolutely love what they did and giving him the opportunity there to run in that RPO system, because that's what he did in college and that's what he's comfortable with. Do you have anything to add? Because if not, I'm going to jump straight into one of my loves.
So I'll just say real quick with Rashad Penny that I do think that the Eagles are one of my prime candidates to add a running back, whether it be Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs. They do have a couple first-round picks this year, so we'll see how that transpires. But I do think that if that doesn't happen and Rashad Penny can stay healthy, he definitely will be fantasy relevant in Philadelphia this upcoming season.
That's going to bring me right into my love. That's kind of why I wanted to kick it off with Penny. That's Miles Sanders going to the Carolina Panthers. Absolutely love it. Foreman's out the door. I know they got Chuba Hubbard, still a young guy. Miles Sanders had a breakout year last year for the Philadelphia Eagles. He signed a 4-year, $25 million contract. He's going to fit that system great. He's going to help the young QB that they get or whoever is starting under center there. So he had 259 carries last year, 11 touchdowns, 1,269 yards, and he was RB15 on the year last year in most PPR leagues. I know that fluctuates a little bit with how people's scoring is. He's, as of right now, he's leading for the bell cow role. And I believe that Chuba Hubbard will spill some work, just like Boston Scott did and Gainwell did. But they signed Miles Sanders, and I think they want to use him as a bell cow back there. And I absolutely love him to finish inside the top 15 again, 15 running backs again this year. And as we get closer to draft time, I could easily see this man moving into a top 12 back for me in my rankings coming up. But I mean, he's still he's only 25 years old. Obviously, we saw him, like I said, he had 259 carries. That's not even talking about, the 26 targets he also had. But this is a guy that's going into Carolina, and they, like I said, they signed him to be a bell cow. They signed him to be the workhorse, and I believe that this guy has the potential and the opportunity all right in front of him to be that. And he gets away from the scrambling quarterback of Jalen Hurts. So that helps him out a lot.
I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be the starting running back in Carolina. I'm not a Miles Sanders fan. I know I'm not the only one, but a lot of people have been burnt by falling in love with Miles Sanders over and over again in his career. I was able to finally wash my hands a few years ago, and I've not fallen down that rabbit hole again since. I know he was better this year, but still down the stretch, he was terrible when it mattered for folks. And, I just think that Chuba Hubbard's going to end up winning that backfield this year. I'm not that excited about any part of Miles Sanders' game, and I know this is one you and I are going to differ on, but I don't see him crashing into my RB2 numbers even as draft or as we get into doing our rankings for draft season. But we'll see. There's a lot could happen in between now and then. Maybe they come out and say that they don't like Chuba Hubbard, and I won't have a choice. But I'm not a Miles Sanders believer, so I'm going to let you get in that boat on your own on this one, Brant. I'm going to stay on dry land here. So
most boats can't carry both of us anyways.
Very true. It'd have to be a cargo ship, and that's no longer a boat, it's a ship. So so it's funny that you bring up Carolina, because my last two guys that I'm going to talk about are Carolina. I'll do one at a time, but the first one I'm going to bring up is Hayden Hurst. So just signed a 3-year $21.8 million deal with Carolina to be their tight end of the future. Carolina for the last several years really has not had a pass catching tight end. I know Tommy Trimble had some okay times as the starting tight end for them last year. However, again, Brant, Carolina, just traded with the Chicago, sent DJ Moore and a host of draft picks over to them for the number 1 overall pick in this upcoming draft, which leads myself and a lot of other folks to say, hey, quarterback's coming on board, right? You don't make a trade like that to draft a guy like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. So why do I think Hayden Hurst is going to fit so well? Well, Brant, what do you and I always say that happens with a young quarterback? Who do they fall in love with?
The tight end and the running backs.
Tight end and running backs, exactly right. And Hayden Hurst last year with Cincinnati, obviously it wasn't great, but there was a lot of really, really good pass catching options in Cincinnati. You know what there's not in Carolina, Brant?
Pass catchers.
Yeah, there's not a lot of good ones anyway. There's a lot of pass catchers, but Shi Smith, Terrence Marshall, I'm not, no. So, I think what you're going to see with Hayden Hurst is similar to what he did 2 years ago in Atlanta, when he had that breakout year where through half the way through the year, he was like tight end 5 in fantasy. I think that could be something he sustains over the course of his time here in Carolina. And I think a big reason he does that is because his average depth of target is 5.1 yards. That is very, very quarterback friendly, especially when a guy's coming in trying to get his confidence established. You look at a guy like Hayden Hurst who's standing, 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. Hey, that's an easy completion. What builds confidence? Easy completions. I think this is a home run hit play for Carolina here, signing him. And I think in fantasy, if you've had Hayden Hurst and you've held on to him, this is going to pay dividends this season. And I think that there's a chance, Brant, that Hayden Hurst ends up being a top 10 tight end on the year. I know it's easy to get into that that back half of the top 10 because it's either a really good tight end or it's just you've had a few good games. I think Hayden Hurst is going to be serviceable in fantasy this year to the way of a top 10 tight end. Obviously, things may change. If Carolina drafts one of those stud tight ends in this draft, obviously that'll change my rankings. But right now, I think Hayden Hurst is going to be a top 10 tight end.
I'm absolutely all on that board with you. We'll call it a train. I'll get on that hype train with you because that could carry us a little easier than a boat.
Freight train.
Yeah, a freight train. Either way, it's still got train on it. The train in the name. Like I said, I told you prior to us going live, I have that age written down on my notes about 6-7 times here. So I kept wanting to write it down, but then I remembered that you had already had him. I absolutely love this. I think Hayden Hurst has another top 10 season. And Hayden Hurst was very, very serviceable in Cincinnati when he was fully healthy. I know he missed a game or two, but when he was fully healthy last year, he was very, very serviceable. And like you said, 2 years ago, he was tight end 9 in PPR leagues there in Atlanta. He's a great veteran presence. Sounds like he's a great locker room guy. from things I've read about him. I absolutely think he goes into this young team and really makes a nice impact on being, the leader on that offense with the young team. I absolutely love him to be helping everybody and anybody in there.
All right, Brant, who's the next guy you love here?
So my last guy that I'm in love with is, and this is another one. He's still a young guy, and he's going to a weird offense that sometimes it's really hard to trust. That's Juju Smith-Schuster. One of the reasons I absolutely love him, he's going right into what was Jacoby Myers' role. He's 26 years old still. He signed 3-year deal with the New England Patriots. He instantly goes into the number one wide receiver role. He's starting to mature. I think this last year he had 78 receptions in 16 games for 933 yards. He only had 3 touchdowns. We saw slowly but surely Jacoby Myers' touchdowns get risen up more. So I absolutely love Juju going there. There's not a whole lot of other great pass catching options. I know Jonnu Smith went out the door, and was it Tyquan Thornton is still there for the young Thornton. Wide receiver there. So I really like Juju going there, and I like him moving forward as a wide receiver too. I'm not going to put him back into that wide receiver one bunch. I think those days are behind him unless he goes somewhere that he just is a bright shining star. But we know what the offense there in New England is. It's a pound first, run it off the play action. Well, Juju's a guy with enough speed and enough shifty mobility to make those short routes turn into a lot. So I really like him in PPR format. I absolutely love this fit for him. I think he's going to fit the Belichick system. He'll be sitting there doing TikTok gritties with Bill Belichick on the sideline after his touchdowns. Maybe we'll get a Belichick smile on the sideline once or twice this year.
I doubt it. Probably not going to happen, even if Juju goes for 1,800 yards and 30 touchdowns. I doubt Bill Belichick smiling much, but I do think this is a good signing for New England. I'm not sure I love it for Juju. I'm not sure anybody gets an uptick in my view from going from Patrick Mahomes to Mac Jones. But it can't be worse. He like you said, he's going to be the number one option instead of just a guy among many as he was in Kansas City. So his volume could go up. I'm just not sure how much I like that volume tied to Mac Jones versus a lesser volume tied to Patrick Mahomes. We will see how it plays out. For Juju, I like it because it's a 3-year deal. There's some certainty there, and I do think Bill Belichick will get his head screwed on straight. If TikTok's still a priority, Bill Belichick will have that fixed in no time flat. So I do like the move for Juju as far as his career, and I like the move for the Patriots. Again, like I said, I'm not sure whether I want to value it as an uptick after you leave the best quarterback playing football at this point. So that one's going to be a wait and see for me, but I could understand why you'd feel the way you do about it. My last one is a guy unlike Juju, who is still fairly young and figuring it out. This is a guy that's coasting into probably his last deal of his career. And that's Adam Thielen, who just signed a 3-year, $25 million deal for the Carolina Panthers. Again, a lot in the way that I talked about Hayden Hurst, a lot of that is going to go hand in hand with Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen right now is going to take a huge boost in my eyes just because there is no other wide receivers there that really worry me as far as fantasy relevancy goes. Adam Thielen's been a guy that the last couple of years has still put up relatively decent numbers. I'm talking wide receiver 3 numbers with Justin Jefferson still in town. So, last year, 17 games played, 107 targets, 70 receptions, 716 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think this is a guy that you take him, out of the background where he was in Minnesota and put him in the forefront here in Carolina with a rookie quarterback. This guy could turn the clock back a little bit and get himself into I want to say maybe a top 20 wide receiver role again. I don't think it's completely out of the question with how well his route tree is down around the goal line and how shifty he is and able to get the ball into his hands on short yardage routes, just like you mentioned with Juju, and make some things happen. Again, another reason why I think he's going to be so relevant in Carolina is he's going to be quarterback friendly, especially for a rookie. over the course of his career, his average depth of target is roughly 9.7 yards. So again, that's going to be really, really tempting for a rookie quarterback to get the ball into his hands and let him make things happen. I think Adam Thielen is going to benefit immensely from leaving Minnesota and having a couple more good years before he hangs it up and calls it a career.
And Adam Thielen, in my mind, he's a guy that was an undrafted rookie. So when it comes out and you got a rookie quarterback, he's in my mind, Adam Thielen seems like the guy that's going to stay on the field late and work with this quarterback, go through the film room with this quarterback. I really feel like that whole best friend situation we saw in LA 2 years ago with Cooper Kupp and Stafford, I honestly could see that being with a rookie quarterback there in Carolina and Adam Thielen. This guy, he's a workhorse. There's videos out there of him putting in work with his family, making sure his route tree's crisp. And like I said, he had to go from the bottom just to make himself relevant in the NFL. So he knows what it takes. And so I really feel like he's going to be that guy that's willing to walk hand in hand with this rookie quarterback, with this young wide receiver crew that's behind Hayden Hurst and him. And I think he's going to be his best friend probably for the first year or two, like you said, and very, very fantasy relevant. You get that time to build the chemistry, and I really think that's what he's going to do with him. And I think this is a great signing for Carolina. I think what Carolina did was this offseason was amazing. I wasn't sold on it, but now I'm kind of looking back at all their signings and everything, and I absolutely love what they did. You got some great locker room guys, some great veterans coming in. Thielen and Hurst are going to be, in my mind, are going to be the stars of that receiving core. And then you got, like I said, you got Miles Sanders there too. And then you get a build actually around that young rookie because you locked up Hurst was also a 3-year deal, correct? So you got Hurst, you got Thielen, and then you got Miles Sanders for at least the next 3 years. So you've got your veterans there. Now you really get to build around that quarterback and see what you can do for, in my mind, a division that's almost wide open. I know you don't want to say it. You'd love it to be,
no, it's wide open. No, it's wide open.
Yeah, but I mean, that division's wide open. Playoff contention's wide open. They've got a nice young defense. Now they put some veterans on the outside on the offense to build around this young core that they're going to add through the draft. I absolutely love what Carolina has done this offseason.
Absolutely.
That's all I got. I know we want to get back into these rookies over the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be a fun couple weeks leading up to the draft. I know I'm going to be live at the draft and try to drop some YouTube shorts or some Facebook lives on there.
Just don't drop your own shorts, please.
Oh no. We'll keep the clothes on this time.
All right, we can appreciate that. Yeah, Brent, I think you're right. Again, as a podcaster here, as an avid fantasy football enjoyer, even here with March Madness on, I'm still checking my leagues every day to see if there's any activity, see any moves that I can make. This is getting to be the prime time for us dynasty guys here, leading up to the draft, right after the draft, free agency. It's definitely a lot of interesting times here for dynasty, and there's no off season for it. Trades happen all year round, so. Definitely looking forward to the next several weeks, next couple of months, even if you will, of leading up to the draft, and then all the mock drafts that follow after the draft is complete. I'm definitely looking forward to all of it. So should be some entertaining weeks here on the podcast. As always, it's going to be entertaining with you and I on here anyway, because we're just a couple of morons that like to talk fantasy football, and who doesn't enjoy that. So, definitely going to be looking forward to being back with some more fun stuff now that we're done with, Smart Guy podcast like we were the last 4 weeks with numbers and trying to make things make sense. So we're getting back into our bread and butter, if you will. And if there's anything you and I know about, it's bread and butter.
Oh, yeah. So I think that wraps it up for today. So as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.